Welcome to my secret channel Emerald, where I ramble about whatever I feel like in the laziest format possible. I started recording earlier tonight for an Emerald video than I typically would. Typically I start like pretty late. And so I was like, you know what, why don't I make this weird vibey ambient song to go in the intro. It's gonna end soon, I swear. It's almost done. Anyways, Biohacker SS from the hit light novel series A Certain Magical Index, also known as Toaru Majutsu no Index. I had a number of people suggest to me that I actually read Biohacker next after my last video that I posted about Index, which was covering New Testament volumes 11, 12, and 13. And even though Biohacker is like relatively new, I think it came out like last year or the year before or something. I don't know the exact release date, but I can see why people wanted me to read it after New Testament 11, because one of the most prominent characters, well, I would say probably the most important character of the volume, Mitsuo Ryuusuke, was the antagonist of New Testament 11. And she is, of course, I assume most people have probably read it, but she's also involved in Astro Buddy, which I was thinking about making a video on next, but I wasn't sure if I should just jump straight into New Testament again, or if I should go to Astro Buddy or what. I guess if you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see next, go ahead and leave it down below. But anyways, I'm glad I did read Biohacker before I went back into New Testament. I took another break, and I have not actually started New Testament 14 yet. It's okay. I'm gonna read more consistently, and I'm going to start it very soon, so it really shouldn't take that much longer. That's not the point. That's not the point. Anyways, so I went into Biohacker with, obviously an open mind. I go into every Index volume with an open mind. But I had heard pretty mixed things. I'm sure everyone that is subscribed to me, or like probably 98% of the people subscribed to me, are probably also subscribed to Aeon of Horus, you know, the big man Toaru channel, right? I've been on his podcast a few times. You might have seen me. And he had told me that Biohacker, I think it's like his least favorite volume because of, well, we'll get into why. But I had heard other people say it's, oh no, it's an amazing volume. It could have been like a New Testament volume, right? It could have just been up there with the main series. And so I'm like, well, what the heck is this volume even about? What is it? Oh, it's about Ayu. And I'll go ahead and say this, just TLDR, I really liked Biohacker, and I especially liked how it ended. The last chapter I thought in particular was extremely well done, and I will say overall, I think one of the reasons I really enjoyed it is because it really put Ayu's character into a larger perspective for me that for some reason just clicked. It's like everything I've read of Ayu in Astro Buddy and in New Testament 11, it's not that I didn't like her. I liked her just fine, but I feel like I didn't really understand much about her character, really even have much to say about her. And for some reason, as I was reading Biohacker, it's like everything clicked. It's like I feel like I got the full main story that there is to tell about Mitsuo Ryuusuke as a character. And I have a lot of positive things to say about Mrs. Ayu, Mrs. Ant herself. So right off the bat, it starts off pretty lighthearted, as a lot of Kamachi's volumes pretty much do. And I want to say that I found myself laughing a lot really early on into the volume. I think it's particularly because of the group dynamics. So the three main characters focus on in this arc are obviously Touma, Kumakawa, Seria, and whose name I keep getting mixed up with Seiri Fukiyose. But anyway, so this volume features Touma, Seria, and Mitsuo Ryuusuke. Those are like the three main characters of this volume, and it is such a fun group dynamic. I feel like a large part of the reason I found the group so fun and entertaining was probably because of the inclusion of Seria. And I wouldn't even say Seria is like one of my favorite characters, but she's a character that grows on me every single time that I see her in another scene. It's like I like her a little bit more and more every time I see her involved in an arc. And you know what? I actually have to say that about all 3 of them in this volume, because I found myself liking each and every one of them, Touma, Seria, and Ayu, like noticeably more than I enjoyed them in past volumes. I'll talk about more specifics later, but to just get back to the group, it's just, I think because it was such an unexpected group to be together, and because of how different all 3 of them were, it just, I thought that kind of set a foundation for a lot of different types of jokes to be made. Right off the bat, I just think Touma and Seria have really fun chemistry. And then you throw in Ayu, who's like this like spoiled, sheltered, very naive, rich girl sort of archetype, and it just blends to be something really hilarious early on. Ayu is someone who to me comes off as being like very socially unaware, and compare that with Seria, who I feel like is the exact opposite, and she's extremely aware and she's very observant. So the part of the volume where Touma and Seria take Ayu to this restaurant to find out why she had been, you know, attacked by these random thugs in an alley or whatever, it's great because they go to this completely random late night sort of fast food place. I liked in my head to think that it's Steak and Shake because it just makes sense because they're open really late. And that's, I don't know why, it happened at Steak and Shake and you can't change my mind, all right? And so Ayu just has never even been to like a fast food restaurant like this. And so what I found funnier than I should have was the fact that Ayu had not ever gone inside the fast food place because she didn't know how to order there. She didn't know how to go up to the counter and order something. And my goodness, that unironically sounds like me when I was younger and a bit more shy. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. There are still places like that where I won't go in there because I'm intimidated on how to order things. But that's besides the point. But anyways, it just had me cracking up because Ayu was just so dumb. She's just so stupid, and I love that. I love that she's stupid. She starts, okay, so she doesn't even realize that like you can eat. She's so rich apparently to the point where she doesn't even realize that a lot of food is like eaten with your fingers. And so she takes it a step farther when she finds it out, and she starts eating everything with her fingers. Like she wants to eat a mini salad with her fingers, and Touma has to explain to her why she can't do that. And that's like the first thing that she says to them at the restaurant. Like they're asking her questions about why she was being attacked in this alley, and she's ignoring it because this girl came to this restaurant with them so she could get a free meal, which doesn't even make sense because she's rich. She's rich. Why does she need a man to pay for her less than $1 burger? It's less than $1. Whatever though. That's whatever. Anyways, I love how dumb Ayu is. I actually love the rich girl, sheltered, doesn't know what she's doing in social situations like that sort of archetype. And I apparently liked it enough to where in my notes I said, I love dumb girls so much, I don't want to be a husband, I want to be a caretaker. Another moment I thought was kind of funny was Seria called Ayu a dumbass, and Ayu wanted to refute the point, but she didn't want to cuss, so she said dumb butt instead. I will point out that while I did really like the humor, a lot of the humor in this volume, mostly early on, a lot of it is at the expense of fan service, which I'll go ahead and talk about because that's like one of the main criticisms of this volume. And there is a lot of fan service. It's so weird to me because even though obviously Index has a lot of fan service, but I've always felt like the fan service in Index was usually well placed and not as frequent as I am used to, having read as much as I have at this point. I've always kind of thought that Kamachi wrote fan service scenes in, good enough spots for fan service scenes. They usually, during the most serious moments of Index, there's usually like no fan service. I feel like if you're intended to feel a strong sort of emotion in a given scene, then usually there's not going to be fan service in that scene. So like a great example is just like, let's say New Testament 9, right? I don't believe there really is any fan service at all in New Testament 9 because New Testament 9 is such a serious toned volume, right? And while obviously Biohacker is not nearly as serious of a story as New Testament 9, it would be kind of hard to be as serious as that. But I still feel as if it was just a little bit too common. And I'm saying this from a sort of like disconnected perspective, because while I think the misplaced and overly frequent fan service is kind of a negative thing in this volume, it doesn't actually bother me. You know, there was a number of times where I just laughed at the fan service. I don't know if I'm laughing at it for the intended purposes. I kind of just read it and I'm like, wow, this man really did just talk about a middle school girl's chest for the 50th time in this volume. And I'm still laughing for some reason. I don't know why. It's kind of like the absurdity of Cosmokamachi just writing as much fan service as he did, which I've heard that he has been hornier in some of his other works before. I mean, I haven't witnessed that firsthand because I haven't read all of his other stuff. But in the context of Index, it's a lot more here in Biohacker, I mean. While, I mean, I can obviously understand why people would be bothered by a lot of the fan service. I understand, but I just can't make myself take it so seriously that it ruins what is there for me. And so, you know, when I usually go into these volumes, I'm always just trying to find what I like about it and what I think is good about it, or what I'm supposed to take from the volume. I'm not usually dragged down by the negatives all too much. Like, I feel like a lot of people are. I feel like there's a lot of people out there that if they notice one or two not even particularly major flaws, like, it's ruined for them. They can't enjoy the rest of what's there. They can't enjoy all of the good that it has to offer. And I always try to go in with that perspective of really anything. Even if the fan service really does bother you, even if you just really can't stand the fan service, which I will say, if you're reading Index, I feel like you should be a little numb to it to an extent. But I do recognize, obviously, it's a little bit more frequent in Biohacker. But even if the fan service really does bother you, I still feel as if it shouldn't take away from all of the good that there is in this volume, because I do think there is a lot of it that I'll get into. But I want to talk a little bit more about the fan service, because this man went far, and I'm trying to think about a part of Ayu's body that he didn't talk about. I think he didn't talk about her feet. I think that's the one. I don't think Cosmokamachi's a foot fetishist. Watch someone send me some screenshot proving me entirely wrong. But man, this man talked about Ayu's, her butt, her thighs, her undeveloped chest, her underwear, and my favorite part, her armpits. multiple times. Let me read you my favorite line in this entire volume. Every other line in this volume is terrible by comparison. So, here it is. I'll put it on screen. If this had all been caused by Mitsuari Ayu leaving herself more defenseless than an armpit in a sleeveless china dress, then the situation was actually... Well, I cut off the sentence. Okay, that wasn't even like a fan service thing. I just thought that line in particular was hilarious. But don't worry, because he mentions Ayu's armpits a number of times. I think she puts like some, I don't know if it's like ice cream or a popsicle or something, and to warm it up, she puts it underneath her armpits, and then Touma, and I think Touma eats it, not knowing, or something like that. It's just like, it's so absurd that I can't help but laugh at it. I can't be like, you know, it doesn't drag down the volume for me. It's basically what I'm saying is I can criticize this volume for having a little too much fan service and it being misplaced, but that's a criticism that doesn't actually bother me. I mean, do I want every volume to be like that? No, I don't. But it didn't really get in the way of my enjoyment of, you know, the rest of the volume, the rest of the material that was there. I was still able to take the story seriously despite Cosmokamachi showing me Ayu's panties and talking about her undeveloped chest for like the 78th time, or him just calling Seria busty for dude, I swear, like, he could not mention Seria's name without including busty somewhere. But anyways, let's just move on. I think I've said what I have to say about the fan service. Let's just kind of continue with this story. So I had mentioned that my opinion of all three, Touma, Seria, and Ayu, was significantly, my opinion of all three of them significantly improved throughout this volume. And maybe that surprises people about Touma. It's always been kind of weird because I've always liked Touma, but I haven't, I guess, I haven't loved him as much as I see a lot of other people loving him. And I would probably blame that on the fact that I have not read Old Testament. I don't have the full understanding of Touma's character. But I feel like Biohacker gave me some insight to pre-memory loss Touma that I thought was really interesting. In Biohacker, Touma is a little bit different than how I had kind of interpreted him. So, and maybe that's, that just comes from my ignorance, really. But I wrote down that seeing how pre-memory loss Touma handles this situation that they run into this big, like, dragon thing. It legit just a dragon. And pretty early on into the encounter with the dragon, Touma essentially kind of runs away for a second, and he abandons Ayu and Seria. And it's interesting to see because he has to talk himself into going back and helping them instead of just running away and, for his own safety, or sending in anti-skill or someone else to go help them in his stead. And it's noted how much of a coward Touma is, or at least how much of a coward he views himself. And so he eventually has to hype himself up to go back to Ayu and Seria and save them, because that's the path that he has chosen for himself. That is the type of person that he specifically is trying to be. And he says that it's not because he is standing up for justice or anything. It's not because he has a righteous goal. It's because of how horrible he feels when he doesn't do the right thing. And so when he does go do the right thing, it's because he's pretty much trying to avoid that horrible feeling that he gets when he doesn't. And I really like that, because it feels a lot more human and a lot more real than some complete white knight, super brave, super fearless, super heroic hero who does the right thing because he stands for justice. And, that's kind of boring. I like Touma's, specifically pre-memory loss Touma. I like his perspective on this a lot. And what I kind of thought about it, like, as someone who hasn't read Old Testament, maybe this can be confirmed for me, but to my knowledge, is post-memory loss Touma not just trying to, let me word it differently. Is he not kind of emulating how he believes pre-memory loss Touma is? Obviously, he's still pretty similar, but I got the impression that post-memory loss Touma was trying to act like how he thought he was before he lost his memories, or what people had expected of him. And so in a way that kind of made him more fearless, because he was just simply trying to emulate the type of person that he thought he was, which was someone that he assumed was probably less cowardly than he actually was. If I'm completely wrong on that, which I very well might be, but please correct me. I always got someone correcting me on some stuff in these videos, but I don't mind. I actually like being corrected on the stuff I say, because I say a lot of dumb things. But anyways, as I was saying, I really like Touma's reasoning for why he does the right thing, as stated in this volume. And overall, this volume does a fantastic job of kind of, I don't know if I'd say humanizing Touma, but just making Touma seem like a lot more of a real, genuine person that feels the same feelings that we feel, or would feel if we were in his position. Another thing I want to point out that I really loved about Touma's character is just how humble he is. So I'll put this on screen, but there's a line about where Seria's saying to Ayu to, direct her thanks to Touma. And that's when they're in, like, the parking garage or whatever, right? And in his mind, he thinks that it says this, I'll just go ahead and read it. If he explained at length why he had come to rescue her, what would it accomplish aside from making it sound like he was asking for something in return? And I really appreciate that perspective. No one deserves thanks more than our guy Touma, but he doesn't even ask for it. What a king. So there you go, Touma. My opinion of you is boosted. It's always been positive, but it's extra positive this time. But yeah, I guess I also want to point out the fight with the dragon. I thought it was kind of interesting in the first place that they were even fighting a dragon that was, I guess like what, bioengineered or something. I don't know, but some fancy science stuff, right? I mean, I guess it was kind of a cool fight for what it was early on. They did a good job of taking advantage of the environment, like using like a fire hydrant and like what I think it was dry ice from like a bakery. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was kind of creative. That was kind of cool. I'm pretty sure Seria came up with the plan. Seria is just a character that just freaking knows everything. Whenever Seria is involved, I don't know why, but I have this odd sense of confidence just because she's like way too smart. And I still think back onto like New Testament 7 when she was like fighting Tsuchimikado and she was like pretty much like winning the fight for most of the time, and she doesn't even have an Esper ability or she can't use magic or anything. She's just absurdly intelligent, and she has a good understanding of like how humans operate and how they think, and she's able to counter people because of that. It's a really cool thing. So before I get into the meat and potatoes of this volume, which is really just me talking about Ayu's character, which I don't know how long I'll talk about that for, but I guess I want to mention the Gokusai sisters, because I was surprised to see Gokusai Kaibi, the girl in the dress. I think she was literally just the girl in the dress for like a decade or something, however long she's been in the series. And I think this was the volume that finally revealed her name. And then just to find out, oh, she has two sisters, one younger and one older. I mean, I thought they had a pretty fun dynamic, but I think probably my favorite part, I mean, yeah, I definitely enjoyed the character actions for sure, but I think my favorite part was when they go to that parking garage or whatever, and Touma is pretty much gonna fight all three of them. And he beats the older sister and the younger sister, and they're just left there. And Kaibi, the middle sister, has to abandon them, and her rationale for it feels very cold-hearted, because it's her sisters, it's her family that she legitimately cares for. And so she logically deduces for herself that she has to abandon them at that time so that she can save them later on, because she knows that's the best way to ensure their safety. But it hurts her a lot emotionally, because once she leaves, she starts crying, which I thought was some really nice sort of like humanization for her character as someone who has always been really has always come off as very cold-hearted. I get it, hearted, like heart measured or power, whatever. Cold-hearted, haha, and just very stoic, right? You would look at her and some of her interactions that she's had in the past, and you think, she just doesn't feel anything for anyone, and she just, does whatever is the most logical because it's logical, and she doesn't need emotions, right? But no, she actually obviously does have emotions, and I liked that humanization a lot, that she had to reject her, emotional state at that moment because she knew it wouldn't get her anywhere, and she had to do what she thought was logical, even though it hurt her to do that. So yeah, I was pretty pleasantly surprised by the Gokusai sisters, and they are just as gaudy as Kaibi. They just, Kaibi really is like Mrs. OnlyFans. She really looks like she just has an OnlyFans account or something. Ever since I saw a meme about that, I literally could never unsee it. I just see her as Mrs. OnlyFans. But yeah, so before I get into just Ayu's character, which will probably just make up the remainder of the video, let me give my biggest criticism of this volume, and that is how extremely boring the antagonist is. Matsuo Ryuusuke, I think his name is. And I wrote in my notes, man, Disney probably has a more interesting motive for world domination than this dude. This guy has the most generic motive and goal I've ever seen. The reason I'm even pointing it out is because Kazuma Kamachi legitimately writes some of the best antagonists I have ever seen in fiction, right? I like, just look at the Oath in this arc, just a very obvious example. Absolutely amazing antagonist. He writes so many great antagonists. And for some reason, this guy is just so boring. It's just like Kazuma Kamashi just felt the need to have, I guess he just had to have someone bad in this story. So he just made this guy whose goal is to awaken the beginning child, the first Esper. I'll talk about that in a minute. And because apparently Aleister Crowley couldn't control her, blah, blah, blah. And so he's going to control her, and he's going to freaking take over Aleister Crowley, and he's going to just world domination, I guess. And it was the most boring thing ever. Like, what are you doing, Kamachi? You can write it. I don't know. I know it's not the point. I know it's not the point of this volume. The point of this volume is most definitely not focusing on any sort of a relevance towards Matsuo Ryuusuke. Like, nothing. He really is such a insignificant part of the volume and what Kazuma Kamachi was aiming for, I believe. But he could have had something. He could have had something that made him interesting. At least a little something could have sprinkled on there. I don't know. I guess it's not the point of the volume, and I recognize that, but it's just something I thought could have been better. I'm not convinced that he was really even trying with this guy, but you know what? I'll cut him some slack. I cut him a lot of slack in the first place, but I mean, this is a side story, so I'm not gonna, blame the guy too much. Anyways, let's move on to something very positive. Mitsuari Ayu. So, get this, I like her more than just because she is cute and funny. I know, it's hard to believe coming from me. I know it's hard to believe. I've seen people make like this, like a 5x5 of their favorite like Toaru characters, and I thought, it popped in my head for a second, I could do something like that for a video, and it'd be kind of fun. It wouldn't be fun. I know it wouldn't be fun because like half the characters in it that are my favorites would just be the girls that are just like cute and funny. I know what I'm about. Yes, I get it. Hamazura is complete Chad. Super well-written character, right? But he doesn't say super in every sentence like Kinuhara does, and that's cute and funny. So she would go on my list. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. Anyways, Ayu. Why do I really like Ayu as a character now? So I never disliked Ayu. I just felt like before reading Biohacker, I felt like there was something about her character that was just missing. And Biohacker was like the final puzzle piece in my mind to connect everything for her as a character and her progression from all the way back from the Astral Buddy flashbacks to New Testament 11. Putting everything into perspective for her character and everything that she's been through from all the way back in Astral Buddy when she was just like a really young girl in that facility, right? And then the tragedy that struck there and what happened to her and what that led to her being in Tokiwadai, being a relatively normal girl that, still probably has some issues, but doesn't seem to be doing too horrible, right? To what she ends up as in New Testament 11 is someone who is so bitter and hateful and spiteful and has pinned all of her problems onto one person, being Shokuho Misaki. Seeing that progression that you have to literally read, like you have to read New Testament 11, and then you got to read Biohacker, and then a side story, and then you got to go read Astral Buddy, a spin-off. A spin-off of a spin-off. You got to read all of that to get the full perspective of Ayu's character, and I love it. This series is autistic, and I love it. I love that you have to go so out of your way to get everything there is about Ayu's character. I unironically love that. But my point is that seeing the progression of Ayu was so interesting to me. It really made her character hit home for me, and it felt her character feel a lot more real in many ways. And Biohacker did a lot to, I would say, humanize her and then make you actually kind of understand her position in New Testament 11. And when I finished it, I was kind of thinking, dude, what if someone read Biohacker before New Testament 11? Then their interpretation of that volume might be completely different. They might feel entirely different about it. And I feel like if you actually read it before New Testament 11, a lot of people may actually just like straight up side with IU. Well, to be fair, a lot of people side with IU in that volume anyways, just because they really hate Shokuho for what is very often pretty shallow or personal reasoning, which it's not wrong to dislike a character for purely personal reasoning. I get that. I just think sometimes people express that bitterness in a very distasteful way. But back to IU. So I've already pretty much explained that I just enjoy her as a character. I enjoy the sort of rich, naive, sheltered girl type of archetype, right? But there's a lot more actually underneath the surface I really liked, and it ties in with a lot of the main messaging and theming of this volume, and I thought it was pretty powerful by the end of it all. So I guess IU's perspective of herself is kind of interesting. I said that she's a very pitiable character. So she finds herself to be very unlucky and misfortunate like Touma does, despite the fact that she goes to a prestigious school, one of the most prestigious schools in the entire city. She comes from a wealthy family, and obviously she's very attractive and feminine, and a character that I imagine a lot of people would be jealous of just at first glance of her. And even though her actual situation and her mental state contradict each other, that's actually extremely common in real life. You could be given everything in life and it still won't be enough. Like, materialism and wealth does not bring you happiness. In fact, a lot of the times, having that complete lack of responsibility completely screws your life over. I've heard the opinion that the more responsibility you have to take on in life from a younger age, the better of a person you will actually be. And that's part of it, but it's also your mental state that's affected. Your mental state will be affected if you're forced to take on more responsibility in life to get out of a worse situation than if you have everything from your birth and everything's kind of handed to you. So situationally, I think IU's mental state is pretty accurate. Although I'm not trying to say IU didn't, work hard to achieve something. That's, very clearly not the case. In fact, she had talked a bit about how hard she had tried to become a level 5 and how she kept coming up short, yet she felt like she was so close. In New Testament 11, when I made that video, I had made a comment about how much I liked Shokuho's line about, the importance of trying your absolute hardest to achieve something or obtain something or overcome some sort of obstacle, and how you shouldn't blame your environment or other people for your failure. You only have you and yourself to blame, which I still morally stand by. But this volume does a great job of putting into perspective how IU really did not have the resources to achieve what it is that she wanted to achieve. So it's clearly noted that while she's at the school, they're doing like these tests or whatever, and her instructor is repeating it. She's saying these praises to IU as she's testing her ability, and she's performing well, and then she overhears that instructor saying the exact same praises to all of the other students around her. And so that, gives some obvious insight into the fact that they're not actually putting as much effort into these students individually as they might have been able to. They are kind of largely to blame for why it is not possible for IU to become a level 5, or mostly not possible. I mean, I don't think you can just say it is 100% impossible. But she really didn't have the resources to reach her full potential as a result. So when Shokuho does give that speech to IU, like, I can understand why IU was probably just, completely rolling her eyes. But that's not to say that Shokuho isn't right, because, well, she still is correct. And I don't mean she's correct in the sense that, IU could just keep trying harder, then she definitely will become a level 5, because that's not what I'm saying. The point of continuously trying and continuously failing is not always to actually reach that goal. Sometimes it's purely for the unintended self-improvement that comes along with it. And I mean that both, physically and mentally. As I'm saying this, I'm realizing that Biohacker kind of just makes New Testament 11 like an even better volume than I thought it already was when I read it. I thought that volume was fantastic. Not to everyone's taste, sure, but personally, I really loved it. And with all of this context to Ayu's character in Biohacker just adds even more to that volume. To move on to some other parts, I noticed that Ayu is extremely quick to cry in this volume. She like cries I don't know how many times. I mean, when Touma like first meets her, she cries, and she cries like 2 or 3 times after that. And it kind of ties into, again, just why she's such a pitiable character that I found myself just really feeling bad for her. I mean, I know it's kind of easy to just like villainize her from the get-go, but I thought that she was surprisingly sweet and caring despite being this, you know, kind of self-centered rich girl. You can see that when she's being chased by the Gokusai sisters into that parking garage. Every single person that she runs past on her way there, she could have used for her own benefit to get out of that situation, but what she actually did was she used her power to tell them to go somewhere safer, to get out of that place for their own sake. She could have easily probably saved herself with her power, but she didn't want to do it at the expense of using other people's lives. Is she, you know, naive and kind of bratty? Yeah, but she is legitimately kind-hearted, and she does, you know, she doesn't just view everyone around her as trash, and I found myself feeling a lot of sympathy for her. Another thing I want to note is how irrelevant her power is in this volume. So a very big part of this volume is about, you know, being useful, and I'll talk more about the specifics of that later. But it's interesting to note just how useless her power was throughout this entire volume. I don't think it really came in handy even once outside of saving those people, which I guess there's a bit of irony there, you know. But there's this one banger line, and I'll put it on screen. It says, her power had one weakness, being alone, that seemed to perfectly reflect the shape of her own heart. So I'm having a hard time putting into words how exactly I interpret that line, but I'm just gonna read out to you what I wrote in my notes. So I wrote, Ayu seems to be a character that represents the struggle of loneliness, and this was before I'd even finished the volume. There's more to it than just loneliness, but I'll continue. Seeing how she was heavily relied on in that astral buddy flashback, and what happened to her once she lost that, and what path she headed down, it's quite sad to see. Had she had someone important to her besides Touma, maybe she wouldn't have become so bitter and spiteful in New Testament 11. She had put all of her trust in Touma, and when Touma did not show up at the time that she needed him, that's when she just gave up on everything, because that was the one person she had put all of her stock into. But I'd like to hear your guys' interpretation on that line specifically, because I'm not entirely confident in how I am viewing it. So anyways, this kind of leads me to what I think is the defining message of Ayu's character, the defining theme of her character. And that is dealing with the expectations that people have for you and the paranoia of disappointing others, especially those that you really care for. I really love this topic and the way it was portrayed, because I feel like it's something I actually do personally relate with a decent amount. So as Ayu kind of puts it, she was born with enough talent to where people would hold her to a certain higher standard, but she wasn't born with enough talent to perfectly deliver on those expectations 100% of the time. And so that leads to constantly disappointing the people around her and not being useful to the people around her, especially when she so desperately wants to be useful to those around for. And we see how enthusiastic she is about wanting to help Touma and Seria after they save her in the parking garage, only for her to contribute absolutely nothing other than getting kidnapped. And she victim shames herself really, really hard as a result. I can understand this because when you're relatively talented at something, people will notice that talent and they will expect something from you related to that talent. It doesn't matter if you even care about that thing in the first place. Because you have a knack for something, people are going to expect you to do something with that. And so when you fail to deliver on something, on those expectations, and it leads to disappointment, you just feel so inadequate. It's very easy to compare yourself to anyone that has a similar talent. So in this case, obviously Ayu has pretty much a lesser ability of Shokuho's ability. And as a result, she is a number of times compared to Shokuho for her ability. I believe both Seria and the main antagonist, Matsuo Ryuusuke, both expressed disappointment in the fact that they weren't dealing with Shokuho, they were dealing with her, Ayu, who is, in their eyes, just an inferior version of Shokuho. I mean, constant comparisons to someone who's far better than you at something is very obviously going to lead towards envy and jealousy and bitter feelings and hateful feelings towards that person that you're being compared to. And it can obviously also lead to a lot of self-loathing and feelings of inadequacy and incompetency. So this volume does an amazing job at justifying why Ayu starts like contemplating suicide and why she does end up attempting suicide. And I like to think that, especially in a place like Academy City, there's an extreme amount of pressure on you in regards to your Esper ability. It's an entire city literally created for the Esper development program. Esper abilities in Academy City are quite literally everything and such a defining aspect of any person's reputation in that city. It's like if you're a level 0, no one will respect you. If you're a level 5, everyone will, either fear you or want to take over your position or be bitter of you. It affects everything from a social perspective. So that feeling of constant pressure to, keep working until you become a level 5 and the constant expectations of improving or delivering on things and just constantly leading to disappointment, especially in the case where at the very end, Touma brought up the idea of having Ayu help with, take care of the beginning child. She just completely fears disappointing this person that she's essentially fallen in love with, or at the very least, deeply admires. And she does not want to see that look of disappointment on his face in regards to her that she has seen on so many other people's face already. Bro, I just realized I'm past 40 minutes. That's a lot longer than I anticipated. But anyways, it's really tragic to see what happened to Ayu's character. As someone who just legitimately wanted to be relied upon, she just wanted to be useful to the people around her. She wanted to feel like an adequate, competent Esper. And to see her completely drown in pressure, I was not trying to make a joke about drowning, okay? To see her completely drown under that pressure and paranoia of disappointing the people around her, she just legit goes to that tower or whatever that had that lake, and she sat there for hours just waiting to come up with the reason for why she shouldn't kill herself. I have to say, I think it was very well written. I think it was very well thought out, and the reasoning is, I think, very justifiable. The reason for why she feels that way is justifiable. I'm not saying her reason for suicide is justifiable. That's not what I'm saying. that'd be kind of mean. And I will say, when Ayu is just about to kill herself, and she gets her phone, and she calls Touma, and then it cuts to the part of New Testament 11 where Shokuho and Touma first meet, and they bump into each other, and he loses his phone, and Shokuho has it, and Ayu can't contact him because of that. That was such a bro moment. I fell. I was like sitting up on my bed, and literally like the second I read that, I just like fell over. I was like, oh, I felt so bad. Dude, it made me want to hate Shokuho. It made me want to hate Shokuho, and she's like my second favorite character in this series. I don't actually hate Shokuho. All right? But I was like, oh dang, I felt so bad for her. I felt bad, but I also laughed. I'm not gonna lie. I also kind of laughed. I think it was a cope. I think I was coping. It was a coping laugh. It wasn't like haha, it's funny. It was a cope, all right? But yeah. So I just really loved what Ayu represented as a character. And this, it really hit home for me when she was expressing how she wished people just didn't have those expectations of her. Because I think that's what drives a lot of people to suicide, or just to feeling so depressed in the first place. Having really unrealistic standards set for yourself is just an easy way to just feel so inferior. And I think that point was really portrayed very well and very impactfully. But you know what? This video is going on longer than I want it to be. So let me just speed run some other just interesting things about this volume. So the beginning child. I am shocked that Kazuma Kamashi introduced the first Esper ever created in a side story volume. I thought that this would have been like some really important thing that would have been introduced in an important volume with a lot of like important lore later on. No, this is like a side story. And he introduced the beginning child, the first Esper ever created in a side story. I thought that was unexpected, but it was still really interesting. That whole sort of exchange was really interesting. Her power was pretty cool. It's just like, you know, whatever bug is closest to her, or even bacteria, whatever like living creature is closest to her, or touching her or whatever, she creates the perfect environment, the most ideal environment for that thing, which is really, really interesting. Yo, someone needs to get this girl a job at the zoo. They kept saying that even Aleister Crowley could not control her, but it's like, in what way do you mean? Because I have kind of a hard time believing that. We're talking about a guy that can like nerf magic gods. Like, how could he not control, you know, the beginning child? Okay, next thing. Here's a funny line. Seria says in reference to Touma, "I bet that boy would act extra nice to a tree if its trunk looked like a woman's crotch." that was funny. That's a good one, Seria. That's a good one. If I were there, I'd give her a high five. I also liked the part where IU was getting really invested in that some manga, some like 100 plus volume shonen manga. At first I thought he was like referencing One Piece, but it didn't sound like One Piece to me. But I also have not seen all of One Piece, so I can't really say. But anyway, that whole exchange there, she had like a really nice sort of conversation with Touma that I really liked, and you know what, I thought it was a nice moment. Nice. Back to the beginning child stuff. It kind of put into perspective just how long the Esper program has been a thing. And so it says that the first Esper created beginning child was over half a century ago. Now that doesn't necessarily mean the Esper development program was in full effect right after, you know, the beginning child or anything. But that kind of puts a sort of time into my head of how this is all gone down, how far we are into this. I know that's definitely got to be expanded upon later on in the series. I don't know if it has yet, but just, you know, like the timeline of the Esper development program and all that stuff. Like you know, it kind of ties in with like what happens to Espers that like leave Academy City. Like they finish the program and then they leave Academy City. What happens to them? I know that's like a major question that absolutely will be answered. I know it will. But yeah, I think that's about everything I feel the need to say. I did not want this video to be as long as it apparently is right now, so I'm just gonna wrap things up. So generally, what did I think about the volume? I enjoyed the volume. I thought it was a solid volume. It is not my least favorite volume of Index. That award, that prize still goes to New Testament 1, which I didn't even dislike. But anyways, I thought Biohacker was a solid volume. I thought there was a lot of cool like themes and messaging going on. I liked a lot of the ideas. Some interesting sort of action scenes. I like the inclusion of the Gokusai sisters. My opinion of Touma, Seria, and IU all improved quite a bit, especially IU. We got some pretty cool lore with the beginning child and how long ago that was. And you know what? We had a lot of cute and funny moments. That's why I read Index, guys. I like Index so I can read about IU's armpits and Touma punching little girls. That's all you need to make a good story. But yeah, you know, if you guys learned anything today, just learn that suicide is bad. You should not try to kill yourself. That's not cool. Emerald is telling you do not kill yourself. Don't do it. Yeah, all right? Cool. So anyways, if you made it this far in the video, you're a mad lad. I love you. I appreciate you. You know, leave anything you want in the comments. Tell me what you thought about this volume. I will, you know, I'm promising right now that I'm in my last week of this semester, then I'm out, all right? And then I'm gonna read Index consistently, okay? I've been reading Index for like almost a year. I think I started in June or July, so we're getting kind of close. So I swear, I'm gonna read the Kamisato Saga consistently, and it's gonna be epic. But yeah, thank you for listening. If you made it this far, you can now go tell all your family, friends, and neighbors even that you listened to a guy on the internet talk about Biohacker SS from the hit light novel series A Certain Magical Index for like 50 minutes. So yeah, go knock on your neighbor's door and tell them that. Anyways, I hope you have a nice day, night, week, month, year, decade, life.